Since Eduardo's sudden death, Beatriz had been struggling to find normalcy in her life. Her husband had been her anchor, and without him, she felt adrift. Thor, the Labrador Eduardo had gifted her on an anniversary, became her greatest source of comfort. Their daily walks through the cemetery where Eduardo was buried were moments of reflection. But those walks began to reveal something far more unsettling than Beatriz could have imagined. It started on a quiet morning. As they walked among the headstones, Thor suddenly stopped. He fixated on a specific grave and began barking incessantly. Beatriz tried to pull him away, but the dog seemed mesmerized by the sight. The grave was simple, marked only with the name Carlos Enrique and a death date from over 20 years ago. Beatriz found it strange but didn't dwell on it. Thor had always been attentive, and she assumed something had caught his interest. Over the following days, Thor's behavior intensified. Every time they passed Carlos Enrique's grave, he barked insistently, refusing to move on. Beatriz started to feel uneasy. She had never heard of that name and couldn't understand why Thor was so fixated on that spot. She mentioned the incident to her sister, Marta. Dogs are very sensitive. Maybe he's picking up on a scent or something. It's probably nothing, Marta said dismissively. You want to know where this story is going, don't you? Then before we continue, if you want to help our channel keep bringing amazing stories, give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. If you enjoyed it, turn on notifications to find out when new videos are posted. Despite Marta's reassurance, Thor's behavior continued to disturb Beatriz. One evening, after returning home from a walk, Thor became particularly restless. He barked at the door as if someone were standing there. Beatriz tried to calm him, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Determined to find out who Carlos Enrique was, she started with an online search but found only a vague obituary. Determined to get more answers, Beatriz returned to the cemetery and spoke to the caretaker. Carlos Enrique? Oh yes, I remember him. He was a businessman, but he died under strange circumstances, the man said in a hushed tone. Some say it was murder, but it was never proven. The caretaker's words echoed in Beatriz's mind. Why was Thor so fixated on the grave of a man shrouded in mystery? Beatriz decided to dig deeper. She went to the city records office to search for old documents. There, she discovered that Carlos Enrique had been a successful businessman, but in the months leading up to his death, he faced accusations of fraud and threats. The official cause of death was listed as a heart attack, but the context raised many questions. As she delved further, Beatriz began noticing strange changes in her surroundings. Objects in her house seemed out of place, and she often felt like she was being watched. Thor, meanwhile, grew increasingly agitated, barking at empty hallways as if sensing something invisible. Beatriz started questioning her sanity. Is all of this just in my head? She wondered. One day, while organizing old photos of Eduardo, Beatriz found something that made her freeze. In a picture from a work event, Eduardo stood surrounded by a group of people. Among them, Beatriz recognized the face of Carlos Enrique. The shock was immediate. How was it possible that Eduardo knew this man and never mentioned him? Beatriz recalled how Eduardo rarely talked about his work and realized she knew far less about him than she had thought. Determined to uncover the truth, Beatriz returned to the cemetery with Thor. This time, she brought a small spade. When they reached Carlos Enrique's grave, Thor was more agitated than ever. Beatriz hesitated but began digging near the headstone. After a few minutes, she uncovered a small metal box. Inside were aged papers and an old recorder. With trembling hands, she pressed play. The voice that came from the recorder was Carlos Enrique's. He spoke in a desperate tone, mentioning betrayal. "I trusted him. I never imagined Eduardo could do this," he said. Beatriz felt a chill run down her spine. Eduardo? What did her husband have to do with this? Carlos's words suggested that Eduardo had played a role in his downfall. Beatriz dropped the recorder, unable to process what she had just heard. The following days were consumed by fear and doubt. Beatriz tried to decipher the documents in the box, but many were smudged and illegible. She searched public records and discovered that months before his death, Carlos Enrique had taken out a substantial life insurance policy. The beneficiary? A company linked to Eduardo's name. Thor, on the other hand, seemed calmer, as if his mission was complete. Beatriz, however, felt that the mystery was far from solved. She confronted Marta, hoping she might know something. Marta hesitated before responding. "Beatriz, I never wanted to tell you, but Eduardo was complicated. He had many secrets. Maybe this is just one of them." Marta's confession was the final blow. Beatriz realized that the man she loved had a darker side she had never known. She felt betrayed but also unable to abandon her search for the truth. She returned to the cemetery one last time, determined to understand what had really happened to Carlos Enrique and how Eduardo was involved. However, when she reached the grave, she found the soil disturbed, as if someone had recently dug there. The recorder and the box were gone. Thor began barking again, but this time his demeanor was different. Beatriz felt she was not alone. The air grew heavy, and an invisible presence seemed to envelop her. From that day on, Beatriz never spoke of Carlos Enrique or Eduardo again. She kept the fragments of information she had uncovered as a dark secret, a burden she would carry forever. Thor, who had once been just a loyal companion, became a symbol of everything she had discovered and the mysteries that would haunt her for the rest of her life. Want to know more about this story and many others we still have to share? Then don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Every day, a new story comes straight from our mysterious archive, filled with tales and accounts we've gathered from various sources. Cases with stories that will give you chills. Also, don't forget to share this video with that friend of yours who loves a good mystery.